Hi, I'm Angie Christensen of Simply Divine Eating, and in this segment we're going to do kind of a little bonus Thanksgiving recipe. And for a minute I want to talk to you about raw food. Now there's a lot of people out there in the health food world that promote a 100% raw food diet. And though that has some significant benefits, and especially if you're trying to heal from something really intense, a raw food diet can be a really beneficial thing because it helps reset your body, it helps give your body really intense nutrition, it helps starve pathogens and things like that. So it has some real benefits. But I do not believe that long-term 100% raw diet is really what we are all intended to eat. And so I'm not a proponent of that. But raw food is really, really important. And Thanksgiving is a fabulous time to talk about why raw food is important. Because I want you to think about the last time you ate Thanksgiving dinner. And I want you to think about how you felt after. Even if you didn't overeat, how did you feel after Thanksgiving dinner? Now when I teach live classes and I ask people that, almost the universal answer is tired. And that is not all because of tryptophan from the turkey. And I want to explain to you what's going on there, why it's so significant, and what you can do about it. When we eat food, we have multiple organs in our body, all the way from our saliva down through our digestive tract, that release digestive enzymes to help us digest our food, and it breaks it down, it helps extract the nutrition so that we can use it. Those enzymes are really, really critical, and as we're starting to recognize how critical those enzymes are, it's becoming very common for people to actually buy pills of digestive enzymes to take supplementary, because we're starting to realize that we're not really fully and appropriately digesting our food in today's world, and that's one of the many problems that we're experiencing with our health. But I want you to think for a minute how this works, because here's a really key hint that nature gives you. Your body literally does not produce enough enzymes for you to digest your food. It doesn't. Now, I do not believe the human body is flawed. I do not believe the natural system is flawed. So I want you to stop and think for a second, why? Why does your body not produce enough digestive enzymes for you to digest your food? Well, the reason is it's completely unnecessary. When food grows, it contains tons of enzymes. It brings the enzymes with it. And when we eat those digestive enzymes combined with the enzymes that are naturally in the food, and together we are able to appropriately digest our food. So the enzymes in food are really critical, and when we cook food, whether you put it on the stovetop, whether you put it in a microwave, whether you steam it, whatever you do, it kills 100% of the enzymes. The instant food crosses 118 degrees, the enzymes are killed. And so, when we have a meal like Thanksgiving, which is pretty much very, very close to 100% cooked, how does your body feel? You give it this huge load of delicious food, but dead food, and it is struggling. One of the reasons you are so tired is your body is literally pulling every resource it's got from every part of its body to cope with this massive amount of dead food that it has been given, and it creates a stress on our body. And it also means that that food does not get digested completely, so even the food we have eaten, we're not getting all the nutrition for it. And the way that nature has created to avoid that whole scenario is raw food. And most research supports the fact that we need at least 50% of our diet to be raw in order for our body to process our food appropriately and to fight disease. There's dramatic decrease in disease rates once you cross the threshold of 50% raw. And so it's not that we all have to go out and instantly eat a 100% raw diet, but starting to look at your diet and the percentage of raw food that you are getting, and really look and make sure that every single meal you eat is getting raw food. It's just so important. And so as we go through these Thanksgiving classes, we're going to have all the traditional cooked foods for you and show you the healthiest ways you can make that. But we are also going to be adding some delectable raw foods for your Thanksgiving menu, because when you can add those, everything's going to go better. It's going to make the cooked food process in your body so much better. So that raw food is just magic. So I want to share with you one of my favorite raw food recipes. Now, when we think of raw food, we tend to think of salad and carrot sticks and fresh fruit, and all of that is great. But there's also some fun recipe ideas that you can do with raw food. And we are going to show you here how to make a raw corn chip. And of all the raw food recipes I have made, this one is my absolute favorite. There's only one downside to this recipe, and I'll warn you ahead. You mix all these ingredients together, and then what you do is you put them on dehydrator sheets. It's torture, because this stuff smells so good that I'm constantly going to the dehydrator, opening it, and trying to pull off a corner and eat it. Find a corner that's dry and ready to eat. Oh my gosh, they're so good, and they smell amazing as they're dehydrating. And so waiting for them to be done is a bit of a torture experience. But that's the only downside to this recipe. It's super simple, it's easy, and if you set out a relish tray or some chips and some cheeses and some things like that, and we'll have some other recipes for you to go along with this, these corn chips are a great way to do that, because instead of having a processed cracker, you have raw food that works just like a cracker. We're going to cut them so that they're just like a cracker, and you can put them out and eat them that way, but it's whole raw food. And so it'll make your body so much happier on Thanksgiving, and it's a great thing to have for people to munch on while you're waiting for the whole dinner to be finished. So let's show you how easy this is to make. So the ingredients in this are whole corn, and I've just got a bag that I pulled out of the freezer. Now again, corn is one of the things I always buy organic, because corn is a genetically modified food where they've changed the DNA with bacterial DNA and things to support pesticide use, and the number of cons of that is significant and way too much to go into right now. But this is not what you want. Genetically modified corn is not what you want your cells in your body and your digestive tract to be made of. So this is organic frozen corn, and most of the time they have this at Costco, so it's not hard to get. And we are just going to put corn kernels in the food processor here. And you have to do this. I always do a giant batch when I do this, because there are things like this where it's like, if I'm going to go to the effort to make this, it's not that it's a lot of effort, but I have to get my food processor dirty and I have to turn on my dehydrator, so why would I make this much? I'm going to really make it. So we're going to do a big batch here. It'll take a couple of times in the food processor, but then it's going to make a lot of these corn chips. So we're going to put in corn. We're going to put in some onion, raw garlic, cilantro, and some fresh tomato. And fortunately, I'm still pulling those out of my garden, and I need the rest of my food processor. Okay, so now okay, so we are literally just mixing this up in the food processor. And you don't need it to be into tiny pieces, but you do want it in small enough pieces that we're going to be able to kind of mash this together and make a cracker. So we're going to pulse this up a little bit more. A little bit more. Okay, so then let's show you what this comes out looking like. So it's wet because of the corn and the tomato. The tomato holds it together, and I can squish this together. So we're going to be able to make this into a chip. So now I'm just going to empty this into a bowl. And we're just going to do it again. some more corn in. You don't have to turn your oven on. You don't have to really make a mess. You're just going to be throwing this stuff in the food processor, and that's all there is. Okay, now that time I had it full enough that the cilantro didn't grind up, so I'm just going to pull it out and I'll put it in the next batch. And we'll mix all our batches together before we dehydrate it so that we know that everything's uniformly mixed. So if one batch gets a little more of one ingredient than another, it won't matter. We'll mix it all together at the end. Okay. Throw that in. Okay, so that's 8 cups of corn that we've done so far. And that's a normal recipe, but I always double it. We're going to do 16 cups of corn, which is 1 5-pound frozen bag. So that's why I do it in that, because then I can just use 1 frozen bag of corn. And there you have it. Now, before I mix that all up with my fingers here and get completely messy, we're going to add the salt. Fortunately, I have one relatively clean hand left to use. Okay, so I've just added the salt, and now I'm just going to play with my food. So everything in here is 100% raw, 100% whole, delicious, everything's good. Okay, so there it is. That's the whole thing. So it takes about 3 minutes to do a batch with a whole 16 cups of corn. So now I'm going to grab the dehydrator sheets and we'll show you how we put this on. Okay, now that I'm done crying from the onions, hopefully, let's talk about how we put this in the dehydrator. So here's how my dehydrator sheets work. I've got my stabilizing tray, I've got my mesh for when I'm putting on apples or anything like that. And then I have silicone liners for when I want to do something like fruit leather that is not solid enough to hold up on the mesh lining. And that's what I'm going to use for these chips, is I'm going to put on my silicone liner, but you can use wax paper, you can use anything that you need with your particular dehydrator to create the sheet that you're going to put these on. And then we're just going to take our corn mash here, but with the cilantro and the garlic and everything, it smells so good, and as it goes in the dehydrator, all that wonderful smell just gets intensified. And this is not a gourmet procedure at all. We are just going to squish this onto the dehydrator sheet. What you want is just any dehydrator where you can control the temperature. You need the temperature, as we talked about before, never to spike over 118 degrees, so that this will stay raw. And then the vitamins, the enzymes, all those amazing ingredients that nature has provided for you are all going to be intact, but you're still going to have all the wonderful taste and texture of a chip. That just spreads out beautifully on one of those trays. And usually when I do this, it makes 4 sheets worth. We'll see how it comes out. Squish, squish, squish. Here's a perfect job to get your kids involved in the food. Because you know when kids get their fingers in food prep, and they know what's in it, and they go to the grocery store with you, and they put it together, and they get their hands in it, they are so much more likely to eat healthy food than when you just put something unfamiliar in front of them at the dinner table. That is just not a very successful thing. Most kids are not into new food. They're into familiar food. And most kids' resistance to healthy food is not that healthy food doesn't taste good. It's just that it's different. And so getting your kids educated on what you're making and why, what it does for them, and then getting their fingers in it can be the magic key to them eating it. They're finding that now even in schools, that there's enormous power that when they get the kids in the lunchroom with a chef or having a school garden and getting the kids involved in the healthy food, the kids eat it. Even if it's weird, even if it's totally different, even if it's something they've never had before, the kids eat it because they've started to separate eating from just a mindless act, which is kind of how we are programmed in our society. Don't look at what you're eating, don't think about what you're eating, just shove it in your face as fast as you can. And it's become mindless. But when they get their minds and their hands back into the food, it totally changes the experience for kids. And they feel differently about it. And you just want them to be uniformly thick. That's important when you dehydrate anything, that it's just uniformly thick so that everything dries at the same rate. So I'm going to wash my hands and we'll show you how to score this. Now how you do this at this point is totally dependent on you. There's a lot of times I just stick this in the dehydrator as is, I dehydrate it, and then when I pull it off I just break it into pieces because I don't necessarily care what they look like. And like I said, I've been dying to eat them while I smell them the whole time, and so I don't really care. I just want to eat it. But if you want things to look a little more uniform, if you're going to lay them out on a pretty platter and you want everything to look nice, you can just score this before you put it in the dehydrator. So I'm going to put these into pretty large squares. So these are probably about 2.5 to 3 inch squares that I'm making here. Or rectangles, they're not perfectly square. And because this is wet, I'm not really even cutting. All I'm doing is separating, creating a separation in my liquidy mash here, so that then as these dry, then when I take them off, it'll be really easy to separate them into that shape. So we'll just do that with all of these here. So I'm getting 24 per sheet. And they're not perfectly even. You, of course, if you would like them to be perfectly even, can get out a ruler, and I've done that before, and make sure that they're perfectly even, so when you put them on a tray they look perfect. Unless I've got a really good reason, I'm just not that precise of a cook. So this is more what I would just do in my own home, and that is, we're going to get it close. Now here, so you'll be able to see, I've cut them smaller. In this case, I've got 32 per sheet. So you know, you can divide them up however you would like. Whatever size works for you. I wouldn't go any smaller than about 1.5 inch squares, because you don't want them to totally crumble when you break them apart. So that's it. So I've got 3.5 trays of these. I'm going to throw these in the dehydrator. I'm going to try not to swoon while they are dehydrating. And then you have got a totally delicious that anyone will eat, I promise. This is not a health food person's kind of food. Anybody will eat these. They are so good. And it's something you can put out for people to snack on with some other veggies and some healthy spreads and things. And people can snack while they're gathering, while they're waiting for the turkey to finish, and start getting all those enzymes and all that good stuff going through your body. Prime your body with some really healthy, delicious raw food to help balance out the turkey and the potatoes and things that are going to come later. And as your body receives that balance, it can cope so much better.